Welcome everyone. Kevin Carpenter, CPP events. So, I haven't said that on the previous ones, but normally when I do this, that's what we put the channel under. It'll end up on ACCU for this because I'm with Mike Shah. We're getting ready for his class on deprogramming, software engineering in the deprogramming language at ACCU this year. And so, welcome, Mike. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Always a pleasure to speak with you, and welcome to the audience.
Yeah, thanks. So it's kind of interesting, I get to see you lots at conferences, but of course, for people that don't know you, congrats, you're now, senior lecturer at Yale. I mean, that's pretty cool. Um, but then also you used to do 3D programming. So all the stuff you do with software engineering is like really applied, especially when it comes to performance.
Oh, yeah. So whether it's in the classroom or stuff that I've consulted on, it's been computer graphics, games, stuff that, needs performance, has to run fast, has to be the latest and greatest stuff that people want to play.
And on top of that, if you have not seen Mike's YouTube channel and you're trying to learn C++ or anything else with computer languages, you have to go check it out. So I just have to make that plug because your channel is great. You have some great material there. So thanks for doing that as well.
Absolutely.
So, who is the target audience for deprogramming language workshop? You've got the workshop coming up, and who's this really for? Because we're C++. I mean, so to be clear, ACCU does not, they do all languages. We'll have some Go stuff there, etc. So I think it's a great conference to have it as. But I downloaded the compiler today because I haven't used it before. So who's this targeting?
Yeah, so great question. The deprogramming language is a language I think that's going to appeal to a lot of C++ programmers, for instance, a lot of people who have maybe used Python as well. It kind of fits in the middle there in some ways. And it's a really modern language. So where we're seeing C++ sort of evolve to, D has a lot of those features already. So this actually goes back to, as far as the target audience, a talk I gave at ACCU last year about how the deprogramming language improves my C++, and C++ also improves my deprogramming. So of course I'm, involved in both communities, but really I think D is a great complementary language if you already have some programming experience and want to see what's the modern stuff, what's another take on programming so I can think about and just grow as a programmer and potentially build better software with some of the features and things that the D language emphasizes.
That's interesting. For a while, I've gone through various languages. Like I started off with Pascal long time ago. And in my current position that I've been at, we're mainly a C++ shop. And so I was really happy just to be pure C++ for a while. But then I ended up spending time in Go.
Mm-hmm.
And, if Go will teach you one thing, it's the appreciation of tuples.
Yep.
And there was a point in time where I was really working in some JavaScript and, they don't use object oriented. It's a facade the way they put it together with prototypes. And so that I appreciate what you're saying, like how polyglot, where you learn other languages, which help you understand the one that you're coming from, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's just essential for any engineer to try and pick up a new tool, even if you're not sure. But like you said, in Go, you'll pick up concurrency or the packaging but system and the tooling, and you'll bring that into, what other languages you're using currently or in the future.
Yeah. So, what are the core ideas of the deprogramming language that your class attendees will look at?
So as far as the class goes, I'm basically going to pack in what I teach in a semester into this workshop. So we're going to cover, a lot of things, but some of the highlights that are important are going to be things like how D approaches concurrency, how it gets a lot of the defaults right from thread local variables to using things like fibers, where in C++ you have coroutines. We're going to look at compile time function execution. So for my C++ folks, const expr, constant, const eval, those types of things. But how D just kind of gets it right. And we can look at how to make this less scary, useful, and see where you get the performance gains. We'll also look at some other features of D that are also in C++, but things like ranges, iterators, virtual dispatch of functions, just how it's approached in a different way. I think so folks get an understanding and understand where you pay for the performance in different languages or can optimize it out, because D is a really clean language for showing a lot of these features.
So That's interesting. I guess where I was thinking about that is if D's, what keeps D from getting more use then if so much of this is already, because that's the part where you're talking about fibers versus coroutines. And it's like, I'm guessing D's had this built in for a while.
Quite some time, yeah. I mean, it's always a mystery how languages get adopted and used. So my hope is folks will come in, see D potentially as a competitive advantage that they can, learn some of these tricks. Again, whether you're going to apply it to the language you're using, or maybe adopt D for smaller projects, or maybe even just your hobby projects, things that you want to take
Hmm.
off as well. So just getting folks to try, and maybe D is not going to be the right language for you, but it will give you courage to say, well, use one of these other languages that I'm not currently using. But it's worth just taking that leap to try something new and see how something else is done.
So that leads me. So, okay, now I'm curious with D, is it about the same? So you made the comparison earlier to like Python,
Hmm.
and I like Python for quick and dirty things, but at the same time, D being compiled, uh, the I'm guessing the performance is better, binary, everything else. But what is it like? I think some of the reasons somebody goes to Python is the massive amount of packages and things that are just available. Does D have that same kind of environment, or not environment, but tooling? Even though tooling's the wrong word, but I think you get where I'm going. I'm missing the word.
Yeah. No, I think this is a great thing to touch on the D language because it has this ecosystem with this story of a package manager. It's got tooling for documentation. So, some again of these modern features that we're seeing in new languages are part of the D story in one place from the start, which is great. But to touch on sort of the Python ecosystem and how it's just this language that you can get up and running fast. So D has a lot of packages for doing that, but one of the notes about D is since it's a compiled language, and just how it was built as,
Mhm.
spoiler alert, C++, then the D language. it, it really incorporated a lot of the C and C++ ecosystem. So it has almost perfect, I could claim, interoperability with the C language. So everything that's a
Okay.
C library, just like how Python wraps lots of C libraries or C++, D can tap into that ecosystem. And that's what helped me make me less afraid to try the D language because I said, well, I know all these libraries. Oh, I can just call into the C functions like I normally would. So I didn't lose any knowledge. There wasn't any risk in learning the new language for me.
Interesting. Okay, so you mentioned compile time function execution,
Mhm.
and you compared that to const expr. Are they? Is there a lot of things that are that way that are one for one? Same thing with like fibers versus coroutines. Um, Give
Yeah,
me a couple more examples if you can.
Yeah, a couple interesting things. So, for instance, I'll give you an example of concepts, which are a new feature in C++, which,
Hmm.
again, part of sort of generic programming, setting constraints. D has template constraints, for instance. So, those are just simply if statements. And it's actually in D when I saw that where I sort of understood, oh, this is what C++ is introducing. I now sort of understand the feature because it was literally just a simple if statement that you put. There's no requires or requires and these sorts of things that you're using. So that's one example that jumps to mind. Let's see other examples in the D programming language. Ranges, of course, and
Yeah.
having things like infinite ranges, again, are things in D that just kind of appear. The meta programming in the D programming language, again, very, very clean traits, a similar thing that you're going to use for that at compile time. Again, it's just, D's had a lot of time to learn from the history of other languages, and it's still an evolving language itself. So again, these are just a few of the features that come to mind that made me not afraid, I guess, to use these features in other languages by seeing them from a different lens.
All right. So to kind of wrap up with one, not a close, yeah, kind of a closing question. So if I was to take your class and I'm a C++ developer, you know, can you give me the top three things that I will take away that will help me in my current language? Try to maybe tie it in that way that
Okay.
D is going to give, or that even, more to specific your workshop, because, again, the amount of educating you do, Mike. I know that the class is going to be excellent from that perspective. It's what you do.
Yeah. Okay. So top three things. One, as mentioned, I think meta programming will not be scary because we are going to touch on
Right.
things like static if, using templates, and it'll just give you at least a framework for playing around with these sorts of features in any other language that you use, and we'll sort of see the value of it. The second, I think, thing that we're going to be looking at that's really important is just the concurrency story, how to organize your
Mm-hmm.
code. We're going to be doing some hands-on applications throughout the workshop, building a little parser of JSON, building a little ray tracer, just again to see the performance. So again, seeing the concurrency story and how these pieces fit together and engineer, I think is going to be an important takeaway. And the third thing I think you're going to find is just the joy of programming in the D programming language. And what I mean about this is that it is a language for engineers to engineer software.
Mm-hmm.
And that means making decisions about how you design things, thinking about just how the pieces fit together, and how you can actually, with the D programming language, make your software a little bit more malleable. And this is a thing D does really great. It's a software engineering tool for, well, engineering software and being able to sort of change it over time. It just has a really nice plasticity to itself, the language. So I think folks will hopefully get out of the language again to look at concurrency, metaprogramming, and again, just become better software engineers and hopefully use D as a competitive advantage in their programming tool belt.
Right on. I will be very curious, and of course, since I will be, I will be stopping in to check it out. And so I appreciate you giving me time today. For anyone that's watching this, stay tuned towards the end. We have a coupon that we'll show. So if you want to end up taking Mike's class, 10% off. By all means, use that and put it to use. And I look forward to seeing you at ACCU in a couple weeks.
Can't wait. Can't wait to see you there, Kevin. Can't wait to see everyone else there. It's going to be a wonderful time, and look forward to seeing you folks in class.
Have a great rest of your day, Mike. Thanks for your time today.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.